Hi, welcome to the BD Roundtable. We're here today with Amy Burton-Bradley. She is a consulting director and partner at Julian Midwinter Associates. So on the call, we're going to talk about how business development teams can better collect, manage, and select the right credentials for the proposal. Joining me as special guest host is Jessica Logan-Gill. She is a senior bids manager at Norton Rose Fulbright in Singapore. So if you want to join us at the BD Roundtable, head on over to bdroundtable.com and sign up to become a member for free. When you do, you get access to a private Slack group community, which is full of legal marketers like yourself. Now, without further ado, here is Amy.
So, all right, let's kick off then. I think what we wanted to start with today is assume sort of a relatively short baseline of credentials and inventory and deals lists, and that it's not very established and it's not very well structured, say. And so if a firm sort of doesn't have that system to collect credentials, preparing proposals is really frustrating. It's really time consuming. It can take a really long time for something that you think this should be easy. And everyone that's waiting on that information from you thinks the same thing. Like, can't you just get it to me in the next 10 minutes? So can you maybe start us off by walking us through what you think is a good bid content library, what that looks like, how someone might start that or improve what they already have, and what is that structuring? What should that sort of filtering look like so that it is easy to pick up when you need it?
Yeah, and I would just like to say at the outset, I haven't come across a single law or other large professional services firm that's actually nailed this. So again, even if you do have a beautifully set up system and you have software, it still does require human input, and it's never going to be a total solution. So take heart.
Yeah.
But I think if we go back to what I was touching on with the vinyl records, if you think of the concept of things should live with their friends, so friends should go together. So baseline, and I know a lot of your audience will have multiple offices that they're working with, as well as practice groups or business units. Really, you want to have, say, keep it to your own office or your own team, a master list somewhere of all of the bids, credentials, docs, proposals, tenders, whatever you want to call them. And we'll probably use those terms interchangeably, but some sort of communication where we're selling our credentials. Baseline is to have a master list. So have that somewhere. Then, and again, some firms are not good at sharing information. I know we have trouble with partners sometimes not wanting to put their Outlook contacts into Interaction or Salesforce. So people have their little pocket of excellence where they've got their bids that they've worked on and they keep referring to that because they know it works. But ideally, if you're a centralized marketing resource or a resource for a practice group, you want to have a quick definitive list of everything we've done, say in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever makes sense for you. From there, what you might want to do is have the type of industry that the bid was to. So it might be pharmaceutical, it might be banking and financial. That way you can at least narrow down our recent bids to these types of clients are here. And then what was the subject of the bid? Was it something about renewable energy? Was it about mezzanine finance? So you want to tag at a high level on your master list what bids are what the topic that they dealt with was, because I think we all have access to some sort of, whether it's a firm document management system, File Explorer, SharePoint, a Google Drive maybe, where you can keyword search, but we want to narrow and filter what we're searching on to begin with. Otherwise it's a treasure trove, it's a deep dive. It's like diving into Wikipedia. You start clicking on things and think, is that relevant? I can't decide.
Yeah,
so if you have that master list as a very baseline, that can help shortcut effort. Yeah. Also, the partners that you're supporting for this credentials exercise, they may be able to tell you, I know that Lee in Tokyo recently did something. So it's also worth asking the question because, as Marika was saying earlier, you try to look at matter lists and deal lists and you do try to join the dots, but sometimes it's quicker to ask a lawyer or a partner who's in that space, because they might be able to say this is actually the best basis to help prepare something like that. So Yeah,
So,
I think yep.
no, I was just going to say, so just picking up on 2 points. So with the tagging, I think is really important because you've got keyword searching, but that just gives you a whole mess bucket of information. What are some of the key tags that you think we should be using in that classification system?
So I think something simple and something that works for the world of your firm, because your firm will have internal language that it uses to refer to things, and everyone broadly, whether they're in that office or not, in theory understands when we refer to this, it means this type of a thing. And then also, if you've got particular sectors, industries, professions that you're targeting with your outbound communications, there'll be tags that make sense. So to use an example of some of the categories I use, because I do a lot of government bids here in Australia, I'll say at the baseline, it's, a public sector thing, it's a government thing, and it's a national Australian government bid, and it's to do with regulatory advice to do with water rights or something. So yes, it's government, but it's not state government or local government. It's national Australian government, and then it's regulatory, and then it's about water. So, probably 2 to 3 levels of tags like that make sense for your world. As long as it makes sense and it means you can quickly or find and put your hands on the bit quickly, I think that's the main thing.
So Amy, if we have sort of a database, like a SharePoint database, it's very easy to add a different tag in a column, but for the offices or the firms who don't have a database, they're just using a file structure, right? So we can easily set this up in a file structure, right? So you put it in the office, and then the next step down would be the industry, or maybe the client expertise or whatnot. But how about the file naming convention? Is there any recommended file naming conventions that you have seen that work well? Because what will happen is you have a file, you open that file and you have like a list of 50 documents, and they're all like January 1st, and you don't know what's inside. What would you recommend we do for that?
Yeah, so I've actually got a blog that I can share as a link for everyone later. But again, something that works in your world, because you do often open a folder and there's 80 documents, and you can maybe sort it by date, but it will say, V22, and then very idiosyncratic dating convention, final, no more changes ever, submit. So partly it's keeping it simple and logical rather than just saving it as letter. You might say covering letter for bid X. So then someone scanning and skimming can just say, right, that's probably the most recent by the date. And then the other thing as part of a bid credentials exercise wrap-up is doing a little bit of housekeeping, because as we all know, you'll probably develop several versions and refine things and start documents that don't get used. It's good practice to have the discipline around cleaning up your file directory, even though it's the last thing you feel like doing after you've had a very heavy workload ahead of a deadline. But that way it eliminates junk, and you don't waste time opening and looking through things thinking, is that the right one? And that you can do over time if it's routine and how you're operating, and have that discipline around cleaning up. And it's also a good exercise, maybe if you have to come into work after you've had a big bid hand in, you can just have a quiet day, quietly organising, and maybe categorising things and putting things into your bid library that you want to keep because it's a better version of what you had, etc.
So the bid library, in your experience, is the full bid, the previous bid, or is it parts of bids or separated into, okay, here's an executive summary samples, here are credential samples, here are the CVs,
Yeah, so I think if we're starting off a low baseline, like I said, you want a list of everything that's gone outbound to clients or prospective clients. And then from there, you'd want a set of all the final documents, the approved ones that went out. And then if you want to create a content library, what you should do is make the content more usable for common things. So conflicts of interest is a big thing for lawyers in most countries with the common law system, and showing that we've got good process around that. So that might be something that you've developed a better version of in last bid, and then that would become your flagship conflicts policy. There might be a particular type of approach your firm, if they're doing commercial litigation. We have our 6-step approach, and that's pulled out and put on a page in your library as a standalone reference. And then by having more bite-sized pieces, people can pull to create something new. So the ingredients are all there, a bit like having a sous chef, where you've got all your prep stuff, like on the cooking shows. They've got all their salt, their oil, their chopped up vegetables, and then you can cherry pick which bits you want to go into the stir fry, or we're making a cake. So I think, have a complete set of everything and a list that you can quickly run down and say, right, what's our best renewable energies in banking and finance examples? And then from there, commonly asked questions, because if you're focused, which we should all be focused on particular targeted markets, chances are their wording might be a bit different, but they're going to have the same sorts of questions, the same sorts of issues. So you're not having to start from scratch each time. And that should take some of the stress out as well, because I think even if you do have a very good, very beautifully maintained bid content library, it's never going to be 100% up to date all of the time, but what it will do for you is inject a lot of efficiency. If a partner's saying we've got to turn this around in 48 hours, you'll get to something that's more 75% there, and then she can spend the time tailoring with you the customization for the opportunity, rather than saying we have a blank page. How do I fill this out? Where do I start? So it's never going to write the whole thing and totally automate it. But it should take you 2/3, 75% baseline content, and then give you the breathing space to really think through what this client needs to see, what's going to sell it, what's going to win it.
Yeah, I think on that point, I think something that BD teams and marketing teams can take more ownership of is knowing the business and understanding, like, what are those flagship deals? What are the big deals that those partners have done that they want to resell into the market, that they want to tell people about? I think we sometimes get a bit, we feel drowned in kind of finding some random far off deal type experience that we did 10 years ago. But the repeat stuff is those flagship ones, the ones that we're putting into the directories, the ones that they're talking about a lot in press releases and other things. So it's about reusing that and knowing those as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good tip, actually, Jess. So often something that they might have tricked up for a Chambers or a Legal 500 or some sort of award submission, that will often give you the who, what, where, why, when and how of what went on. And then I like to do with your flagship deals, projects, matters, litigated cases, it's almost like a 3-tier thing, where we have the story in a sentence version of it, which is literally a sentence: deal X, Dubai, involved these 50 million. Then you might have the bullet point or paragraph version, where we put in a little bit more detail, some more specifics. And then you might have the 1-page version, which might have been a case commentary featured in one of your publications, might have been submitted as a case example in a Chambers or a Legal 500. And then that way you're getting more leverage out of the effort that the partner might put in with you and then they're not annoyed as well, because we've done a little bit of homework and said, right, what is his team or her team? Would have been some of the things, and you've trawled the newsletters and got a fair idea before you go and have a conversation with them at the outset of preparing this material. Because I think it's okay, partners are very time poor and all of that. It's okay to ask questions. It's not okay to waste their time, but it is okay to be curious. You're here to help me, help you. If you could give me more of a feel, if they're saying renewable energy, would that solar thing we did last year be relevant? What else can you tell me? Do you think, who else should I speak to? And then that way you're able to get a better quality draft together. Obviously it depends on the cooperation of the partners and lawyers, but assuming that they're eager to help you help them, you can develop some respect and rapport with those partners, and they'll know that you're not bothering them and saying fill this out. You're actually going to write it for them or help them put it together and help them win.
So I'm going to pick up on that. I mean, I think very often we will get used to be BlackBerry, now it's iPhone, one sentence subject, please send me our renewable energies credentials, or please send me our acquisition finance in XYZ country, or please send me the latest tech M&A for, you know, the Southeast Asia region. What in your experience, what's the best way that BD responds to that? That's obviously a key point for us to extract more information in order to prepare something really good. You know, a 75 to 80% final version rather than say 30 or 40% kind of just templated, branded document. So when the BD person or the marketing person responds to that request for credentials or a proposal or whatever it may be, what's your advice? What should they ask back? What other information should they be extracting?
Yeah. And I think, again, that whole point, you know, and obviously some of these partners are maybe not at the moment because of the pandemic, but they're often on the road, they're on the go, they're traveling, they're working crazy hours, they want to just bark out an order. So I think that's where we need to have our ducks in a row, do that desktop research, ask someone else in the team who's less busy or unapproachable, what are some recent things? So you've got a baseline understanding, okay, what their meaning is this type of banking and finance, and it's for an oil and gas project. So then you can fire back with, yep, great, love to help. Here are the 3 things I need to know. Could you point me in the right direction, please? So you're not asking silly questions or being overly formal and too shy with the partner, but you're getting in there and showing that you've joined some of the dots where I identify you can help me help you. Is what we really need to know, is it this or this? And my understanding isn't so great on that one. Is it this sort of a thing or that sort of a thing? So ask intelligent questions, because again, it's okay to be curious. You're there to help. The lawyers and partners are our internal customers, but we don't want to look like we're wasting their time or make them feel that we're not adding value. So it's like being a consultant to your own internal customers. And then after a while, if you start winning some with them, they will make space, they will make time, because they'll say, oh, Amy's not coming to me with stupid questions. She's actually really adding value to this process for me, and I can see the benefit of it. And she's made some effort to get together, you know, the baseline of credentials, and then I can add 3 or 4 new ones and capture them that way. Because there's sort of perfect process and then there's reality. And I think we don't want to elevate process above an outcome, which we can sometimes get caught up with in bigger firms. I think, you know, it shouldn't be this way. We should be able to capture outcomes and get them all to update their CVs, but they're busy, you know, earning fee income. So we need to balance all of those things. It's tricky.
Yeah, it is. I think one of the things that I have tried to do is, rather than just fire a quick response, which is, yep, sure, no worries, I'll get it back to you by 2 o'clock or by tomorrow or the end of the week, is try and start to draft the document, because that's when the questions come up. I'm like, okay, you said we need to present this to the bank, but is this as borrowers council? Is it as lenders council? Does the jurisdiction matter? Or is it fine? We did, you know, this renewable deal last year, but it was hydro versus solar. Is that going to be relevant? And so I think I have to really sit on my hands and try and start the document before I respond, because it's really easy to go, yep, no worries, and then come with lots of questions.
That's it. So I think as well, once you can have, and it's an iterative process, usually, ideally. So there is going to be some back and forth with your subject matter experts internally, whether it's the lead partner or one of their offsiders who can point you in the right direction. Because again, once you've got that clarity, it's this bit, but not that bit, or in this scenario, because it's in China, that's not going to be relevant this time. We're wasting page space. Don't bother putting it in. It should become obvious what we include. And if you can get from the partner, and some of them are better than others, but some insights into where the credentials are going, it might just be a formality and they just need a little short thing because they've already got it. It's just a bit of paperwork that they want to have on file at your client's end. Other times their immediate liaison might be sold on the firm and the approach, but they might be under pressure to get more than one quote or test the market. And then your client might need to shop around the credentials internally and get it past the board. Other stakeholders that have got a vested interest, they might have a veto on it and say, well, I've got a guy that I want to use. So we need to understand the audience as well, ideally before we write, before pen hits paper. So.
Yeah. The bid is often won before the document is drafted. Won or lost, I should say.
That's it. And look, if they're having good conversations with clients, we hopefully don't even need to do a credentials document because there's just such trust. The best advertising is doing a good job on a matter. Yep. And then we get invited to do more and we can head off their feeling, their reservations like, oh, I need to know more. That guy didn't really sound sure of himself. We better ask what the firm does. The ultimate is avoiding it altogether.
Yeah.
Not always possible though.
And okay, so on to the document itself. I think everyone has a view on how credentials are best structured, and how we should communicate our proposition, if you like. But you've seen plenty of bids. I think, was it 450 or more than 450? I looked at your own CV. So quite a few. And I know that a lot of them have been sort of in that very formal tender, but if you're looking at that credentials capability statement, sort of just that deal list with sort of more firm information around it, what works, do you think? What are the key things that when someone is drafting this sort of credentials, short proposal type documents, what can they leave out and what must go in?
Yeah, so if it's a less formal one and they say, oh, could you just send us some information about your firm, or could you send us some credentials, but we've got these 5 things we need to know, that can give you a hint. This is literally what they need to know. There may be some threshold issues. Do you have a team, based in Cambodia as well? Because that's important. We have someone on the ground. So if we don't meet those threshold things, we need to work around them. I think I would say all professional services suffer with this a bit. We need to recognise that the client always determines what is valuable to them. So even if they've asked, by the way, we'd like to know about your corporate stance on X, and maybe some of our lawyers think, well, that's stupid, we'll just skip that. You've got to be respectful and put something for it. The other tendency law firms in particular have is, yes, the client is literally asking about your firm, but we need to address that, but also the document really needs to be about the client. So we need to be more clever than saying we were established in 1856. You can put that at the end, and there'll be people at the client's end who are like, oh, I'm interested in the history of the firm. Others won't care. They'll want to know up front, what are the fees for this, or what's the return on investment? So I think if you can have in mind that, yes, and lawyers are very literal. Yes, the client has literally asked for an overview of our business, but let's make that information relevant to this client. So, it's good that we were established in 1859 because what it means is you're dealing with a law firm that is stable, and that's good for you because you want some stability. So we join the dots and we make ourselves relevant. And I think with proposals, there are unspoken questions and they want to know, can we do what they need? Can we really do what they need? If we choose this provider, will we get a good return on our investment? And if your proposal content isn't proving that you can do it, showing the way that you'll do it for that client will be a way that is acceptable and in fact very beneficial to that client. And, if they can't justify from what you're telling them the cost or the return on investment by choosing you, you probably shouldn't put that content in. So there's the spoken, there's the literal questions, and then there's the unspoken questions. And a lot of lawyers aren't good at reading between the lines, which is where marketing and BD can really help unpick some of the deeper issues and show how our firm is highly relevant. I think as well, a lot of legal services have become quite routine and highly commoditized. So that's where we can say we do 650 of these due diligence exercises a year in India. However, the way our firm does it is what differentiates us positively. Not only is it value for money, but it's supervised. So you might not talk about, we've done all these due diligence exercises with, 100% success in terms of time frame, but we might talk about how our service is different to all the other classic law firms and why it's better for your company to use us because of these reasons.
Amy, just drilling into this a little bit. So let's say a firm wants to present, let's say, as Jess said, the tech M&A. So they'll probably put a page with describing their M&A service, which may be 4 or 5 paragraphs long about everything they do in M&A. And then behind that, they will put maybe 2 or 3 pages of deals. And that's kind of what I've seen law firms do. What's a better way to do that?
Probably, not have the laundry list. And I think Rajan was saying earlier that they just put in everything but the kitchen sink. So it's having that knowledge to do the hard edit and keep it to highly relevant. You're always going to get lawyers that want to put everything in. So I think, in my 15 odd years in the game, there's really only so many ways you can jazz up or glamorize those big long deal lists. And we might get onto this a little later, but in terms of the visual presentation, it's all of those classic rules of thumb about readability. And at the moment, because of the COVID and everything that's going on, people are really pushed for time. Don't bury your lead, as they say in the news game. Don't bury the lead on page 4. Flip it around, put it up the top. So that's where you do need to, even if you've got your credentials, classic list of the M&As we've done in the last 6 years, let's reorganize and resequence. So it's a mining company. What were the mining ones? Put them up top, because even if they read no further than the first 6, like, oh yeah, these guys sound the part. And again, you're going to have some people who are going to want to read all 10 pages of those deal lists and be like, yes, okay, well, they meet my standard. Others are going to skim and go, yep, they sound good. I trust the guy that's interfacing with that law firm. Yep, no objection. So you've got a variety of audiences that you're trying to capture. And look, this is where most of your audience probably, depending on the firm, probably have like quite a nice, slick looking branded template that they can pop stuff into. So all the classic things, use subheadings to break up text, bold pertinent information like dollar values, use bullet points or tables to make content bite-sized and digestible. So yeah, there are some, basic desktop publishing rules of thumb. And it'd be wonderful if there was time to do like a really cool infographic that shows this customer's journey using our legal services. But again, as we all know, you usually don't get that time in legal to take things into like InDesign and all those desktop publishing graphic programs. Whereas say in engineering, where I used to work, we'd have 6 months and you'd have 80 people working on a bid, and it was like producing a full-on publication, and it would be like a magazine quality output. So yeah, I think the basics, you want to make it readable and the information that's most important to tell this client this time, findable. So I've got a blog on that, which I can share with
I was just about to say, I think
I
might have read a checklist or some sort of like, do's and don'ts, really do's and don'ts, not just if it's convenient.
Yeah. And that's it. You learn from experience. And
for all those who are watching this, please do head over to Julian Midwinter's website. I'll link it in the description below. They have some fabulous checklists and sort of, this is what you need to do and this is how it should be done. So thank you so much, Amy, for your time. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Probably look me up on LinkedIn, Amy Burton-Bradley. There's only one of me, so easy to find. And I love hearing from people, and don't be shy about asking quick questions, because sometimes that can save a day of angst. And you just need to check, is this the right approach? And if I can help, I always will.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jessica, for helping co-host this session.
All right. Thanks, Phil.